You want me to try again? If you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll just move right along to the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the December 17th meeting?
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, are there any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And moving to the consent agenda. Jamie, this is a roll call.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Oh, sorry.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Got it. I'll get it.
Michelle?
Aye.
Aurelio?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
Sally?
Aye.
And I'm aye.
Okay. Move on.
You know, Lou Panazon used to be the clerk, and he would forget everyone's name
I wrote it down
periodically.
just in case. I was like, you can't figure you're blanked out, right?
Welcome, Anna. Do you have a report for us?
Happy New Year, everyone. The spring semester began on January 8th of 2020. We are in full swing of things. Scholarship applications will be due soon, and students are finishing up their student aid application with the assistance of CalSOAP and the Santa Barbara Scholarship Foundation. Our virtual enterprise class is traveling tomorrow to Bakersfield to a regional summit where they will be showcasing their business plan and overall company. Our FFA program also traveling to this month to Monterey, California for the annual Made for Excellence conference. This semester, we are offering a dual enrollment linguistics course with SBCC. This course is taught by Mr. Basone. There will be a winter formal dance on February 8th of 2020, and tickets will be on sale next week. Thank you.
Got a busy semester there. Thank you. Dinah, you have some recognitions?
Thank you, Sally. Happy New Year, everyone. And I'd like to begin with recognitions from the high school in Rincon on behalf of Principal Corneo. He'd like to recognize Luz Rodriguez, our CHS registrar, for her outstanding work with students, parents, teachers, and colleagues, and scholarship organizations. She always takes great care of registrations, transcript requests, and scholarship applications. And on behalf of CMS, Principal O'Shea would like to recognize Robin McCulley, our 6th grade English Language Arts and Ancient Civilizations teacher. She holds high expectations for all her students, and she also coordinated the January grade 6 trip to the Santa Barbara Symphony. On behalf of Canalino and the Family School, Principal Pursoon would like to recognize Reed Barnes, Adam Camardella, and Justin Hardiman. They're our CUSD grounds crew. They've been installing a new campus garden to facilitate outdoor education. We appreciate their hard work as well as the support of the parent groups who are providing financial assistance. And then on behalf of Aliso and Summerlin, Principal Fox would like to recognize Parents for Aliso and Parents for Summerlin. Along with support from families at both sites, leaders in these groups have worked to provide staff and families with fun and engaging activities that support both the home and school. Both teams work tirelessly to fundraise in order to provide students with access to new learning adventures and materials. We thank them for their continuous effort and dedication and all that they do for the students.
Thank you. You want to just go ahead with your report?
Sure, I'll continue with appreciation. So I would like to acknowledge the Measure U team who are here tonight and the Canalino principal, Jamie Pursoon, and her staff for preparing for construction relocations and for the completion of the new classrooms in Canalino in Wing 1. We also recognize the grounds department, Reed Barnes, Adam Camardello, and Justin Hardiman for building a beautiful outdoor garden for Canalino and the Family School. And then we have special appreciation for our IT team, Aaron LaPlante and John McCoy. As most of you know, we were attacked by a ransomware virus that affected all of our PCs. Both these colleagues worked feverishly over the last week and the past weekend to fix all the servers and the computers and restore internet services and the data. We have approximately $90,000 worth of damage, but we are submitting insurance claims. Okay, good news. The Carpinteria Chamber of Commerce 62nd Annual Awards Banquet will be on January 25th, and 2 of our CUSD educators will be recognized as Carpinteria's Teachers of the Year. Andrea Edmondson, who's a kindergarten teacher at Canalino, and Van Latham, a math and computer teacher at the high school. So we congratulate both Andrea and Van. Regarding the California School Dashboard, this is an online tool designed to inform communities about multiple measures of school success for their K-12 students. There are 6 indicators of school success: high school graduation, college career readiness, academic performance in English language arts and math, chronic absenteeism, English learner progress, and suspension rates. In the next few years, we'll also see performance on the California Science Test. Academic performance is based on 2 factors: the current year results and whether results have improved from the prior year. There are 5 performance levels from the lowest to the highest, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or from blue as the highest down to red as the lowest. And the performance level is not included when there are fewer than 30 students in any year, which is true for our schools in Summerlin as well as the family school. So our district received the highest rating, which we're very proud about, on mathematics achievement, which was a 9.9 point increase from last year. We had lower performance ratings in graduation rate, English language arts, and suspension rate. The lowest performing rating was chronic absenteeism, with 11.2% chronically absent, which is a 3.2 increase. And our English learner progress at 49.1% is rated as medium progress. So we are concerned with these results, and so the district leadership team since September has been implementing specific school site strategies to increase the lower performance areas in language arts, to reduce the suspension rates and chronic absenteeism, which is K-8, and to increase the graduation rates. The other area that's of interest is, as we approach 2020, there's new California education laws that affect our schools. So Senate Bill 328 mandates later school start times for older students. That will specifically affect our high school, and that will be in place 2022, September. So we will be working with the high school staff to make recommendations. The middle school, we're all set because they don't begin until 8:30. We have AB 1505, 1507, and Senate Bill 126. They're new rules for publicly funded, independently operated charter schools, so that doesn't affect us. Senate Bill 419 permanently bans California public schools from suspending students in 1st through 5th grade for willful defiance beginning in 2020, and we don't suspend elementary students for willful defiance. They also extend that ban it'll be temporarily extended to students 6th through 8th grade. So we've been working with the middle school to implement restorative practices because we really don't want students suspended. Well, we don't want them to display the behavior that requires that intervention, and so we're looking at different restorative practices so students are still in school. AB 48 on March 3rd, voters will decide whether to approve a $15 billion state bond for K-12 schools, community colleges, and universities. And the Measure U team will talk briefly about that because we are going to discuss it as a resolution for the school board to put it on the ballot. Senate Bill 316, California high schools will be required to print the phone number for National Domestic Violence Hotline on student IDs for pupils in grades 7 through 12. That affects us, and we'll do that. AB 543 requires public schools to prominently and conspicuously display a poster of a district sexual harassment policy in every restroom and locker room at the school site, and we comply with that. AB 493 is requiring the CDE to create resources that schools can use to train credentialed teachers and staff on how to support LGBTQ students. AB 1319 allows migrant students to keep attending their school of origin as to oppose enrolling in new schools when families move each year. We already implement that practice. Senate Bill 265 makes it explicitly illegal for California schools to withhold lunch from students who have outstanding school lunch debt. And we feed every student. And AB 272 allows school boards to ban or limit students' use of smartphones while at school except under emergencies or specific circumstances. And we already have a board policy in place that you have voted on. And the last item is Measure U. As I mentioned earlier, construction on Phase 2 of Catalino modernization on Wing 1 is virtually complete. And we're excited that new classroom furnishings are scheduled for this week, and classrooms will be ready for teachers and students on January 20th. Phase 3 construction is scheduled to begin in early February, and 2 aging portables were removed from the campus during winter break. Planning for summer 2020 modernization projects at Aliso and the high school is also underway, and the Measure U team is evaluating requests for proposals for leaseback projects for the high school gym modernization, high school administration building, Rincon modernization, and Aliso modernization. And after they evaluate these responses, the contractors will be approved at the board meeting on January 28th. And you know that we're looking forward to hearing the update from Measure U today. Thanks.
Thank you, Diana. And now we're going to have the Measure U report, and I believe, Cindy, you're up first.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to introduce to you our Measure U team, all of whom I think are familiar to you. Our architects, Joe Wilcox from KBZ, Robert Robles from Robert Robles Architects, and this is Jonathan Leach from DUDEC, who works on our coastal development permits, and of course our director, David Winiger. So we'll be presenting to you tonight updates for the projects on all of the various campuses. So each architect will present information related to the projects that are coming up. And then I will present some budget updates for all of the campuses, and then finally an update on our state funding. So that's an overview of what we've got going on. I've got to remember to keep moving the slides along here. So coming up first will be Joe Wilcox to discuss what we're doing at the high school.
Thank you, Cindy, and Happy New Year as well. And it's always exciting to come back to the board and talk about our projects. So Phase 2 for the high school will start this summer, and we'll be modernizing the F wing, which has 12 classrooms, the B wing, which has the library and 4 classrooms. Similar to last summer, Phase 1, we're going to have new flooring, new ceilings, new ceiling fans, new heating and venting, new painting, new birch paneling, new marker boards, tack boards, flat screens, and all the IT and the teacher walls and so on. So it's going to be basically the 2 southern classroom buildings will be happening this summer. The gymnasium improvements, we have a floor plan here, will start in July of 2020. It's already been submitted to DSA. We already have all the plan check corrections back, and we're working on those now. That project includes new locker room layouts, all ADA compliant. It includes new showers, new tile, larger restrooms off the lobby for the public, for the men and women, new hardware, new lockers, heating and venting as well, new bleachers, a new scoreboard, new weight room on the north side that's accessible to both boys and girls from the exterior, so it can be used by both boys and girls. New paint, obviously, and then we have a girls' softball batting cages north of the gym. I'm going to go back a slide. On the high school site plan, campus plan, I didn't show, but just to the south of the F wing is where the new administration building will be going. And that will be going to the Division of the State Architect's office in September of this year. We're making some value engineering changes to bring it closer to the budget. And we've had to reduce the building size by somewhat and simplify the site work. And that's where we are. Robert.
Thanks, Joe. Happy New Year, everyone. Good to see everybody. I think the last time I was here was last year, I want to say May or March? May,
May.
yeah. So since then, a lot of great things have happened. I think many of you have toured the facilities with us, and moving forward into the next year, this year actually, we're really excited and have a lot of great expectations for our projects. For Aliso, to start off with Aliso Elementary, what you've seen so far is you've seen phase 1 being completed, which is noted in blue on that map that you see in front of you. Similarly, to that project, we're in phase 2, we're carrying on in the red, beginning this summertime, and the scope of work is very similar to what you've seen in phase 1. Phase 2, we are going to see a change in use of that building and the A building, which is the building up front. So that building's being converted into the new administration wing and classroom wing. So there's some work, a lot of work we're doing in that building. And then the other elements of the scope of work in that phase and the rest of the phases are very similar to what you've seen in terms of updating the mechanical systems, communication systems, lighting and electrical, updating finishes throughout, casework, marker boards, tack boards, and also a lot of site work related to the utilities and replacing sidewalks to make the facilities accessible. So then moving forward into, so you see phase 2 occurring in summer 2020 this year, and then we've got phase 3 shown in green on the map, which is occurring in summer 2021. And the reason we have to break that up is due to the size of the projects and what can be accomplished in the summertime. Each of these remaining phases that are left in the project are considered fast track. In other words, an accelerated schedule because of only having 62 days to accomplish a pretty phenomenal amount of work. So that's what's happening in Aliso moving forward. Okay, I'll be back. Canalino's next. Yeah.
Robert's going to talk about Canalino now.
Robert's back.
You're back.
Thanks, Joe. I always have to have a lead-in act every time. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so Canalino. I use the same color coding as the last one. Basically, you can see phase 1 that was completed last summer. Wow, that was a lot of work to squeeze in a short amount of time, but it was done. So we're pretty happy about that. And then you can see in red what's under completion right now as we speak. And I'm doing the punch list walk with my consultants actually tomorrow on that too. Punch list is kind of like the final inspection on a project to note some things that need to be finished up. So we're doing that, and then we're looking at what's shown in the green, which is phase 3, and that's going to be beginning this month, and it's scheduled to be finished in June of this year. So in terms of the general scope of work, it's very similar to what I described for Aliso. There's no modification in use of the buildings, but it's updates of the classrooms, update of restrooms for accessibility, site work, and a lot of the things you've already seen on these projects. And I think you're actually on now. So, okay, yeah. Yeah. Let's check. Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Robert. So, we've been working on the Major U team for quite a few years, and I don't know if you know, but the Major U team meets every Wednesday at 8:30, and we go through all of our schedules, talk about construction issues. We have construction meetings. So a while back, the team asked me to look into Summerlin School being built as a conventionally built school and not going with the modulars, and seeing what the advantages and the disadvantages would be. So the first thing that we talked about was the site logistics. We went up to the site because we saw how they delivered all the modulars at the high school. And the high school had the advantage that it had a very large staging area where they brought all the units in, parked them all in the parking lot, We're able to pick them and drop them really quickly. Up at Summerlin, you know, we're going to have to use the county roads for craning, which is going to be difficult. There'll be some permitting for that, I would assume. Should probably look at Jonathan here. He's our dudek. We also know that Banner is in really poor condition. We know that Varley has overhead utility lines, and Valencia really isn't an option to drop them from because of the slope. We think the advantages of a conventionally built building allows the design to really be more of a Summerlin seaside school, kind of fit the community's architecture much, much better than the Gen 7s would. And in fact, when we were at the BAR, and Diana, remember the BAR, County Board of Architectural Review, said at that meeting they really liked the site design, and they really understood that the district was going with Gen 7s, but they thought that if you were really designing it from scratch, you could probably make it fit the community better, but they still accepted the Gen 7s. So we think there's also more flexibility in the quality of a conventionally built building with cabinets and restrooms and things like that. And we actually are thinking that the standard construction can be equal or better than the Gen 7s, or better than the modulars, I should say. So then it came down to talk about the costs, and we just recently went through a lease-back project with another district with the same contractor you're working with for an elementary school, and the costs were very, very close, if not almost the same as the modular projects. So we really believe that we can deliver the conventionally built buildings at the same cost or not much more. We are going to recommend that we, in order to hit the budget, that we eliminate one classroom on this campus. We've actually gone ahead. That site plan up there was the one that was approved in 2016. We went ahead and changed our rendering from the previous modular ones to more of a horizontal siding, pitched roof, kind of like I said, almost like a Summerlin seaside building. So then the fourth item that the committee or the team asked me, and said, well, what about the schedule? And that's why we got Jonathan involved, because of going through the county BAR. I don't see that being a problem at all.
Pretty.
We basically are going to lose 3 to 4 months, but when you project it out, it means that originally we were going to start construction in March of 2021, which is during a school year, and pushing it out, we'll start construction of June of 2021, which is actually better in terms of educational logistics, I would think, but that's, and if we have any questions about the environmental review, Jonathan Leach is here from DUDEC, and I think I'm done for now. Oh, Robert, you're back.
Okay, so Rincon High School. So I'm sure everybody knows by now, but what we're doing at the Rincon, for this Rincon building, is it's the current administration building for Carpinteria High School. And when that staff moves out, we're looking at remodeling this existing building. It's currently purely an office building, and we're going to turn it into kind of a mixed-use building where it has offices and classrooms and restrooms. The modernization work that we're doing also on this is very similar to the scope of work that I've described for the other projects. We're going to be providing accessible restrooms. There's going to be, like I mentioned, for the change in use, we're going to be reconfiguring a lot of the interior walls to make that work. There's going to be new mechanical systems. We're going to update the communication systems, the lighting, the electrical systems, fire alarm. There's going to be new and replacement doors and general updating of the door hardware, and then interior finishes throughout. So it's going to be essentially like a new building inside the existing envelope. There's also a significant amount of site work that also is involved in this project. In terms of schedule, we submitted the project to DSA last year in November. We got our corrections. We've received our corrections back from DSA just a little while ago, and we're currently working on preparing the project to go back to DSA for our first review, back-check review, mid-February, so next month. And then we have construction scheduled for June 2020, and that all dovetails into the master schedule for all the other work that's occurring at the high school. So is there any questions while I'm up here? Or I don't know if there's questions at the end or,
At the end.
okay, okay. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to serve Carpinteria.
Thank you.
Carpinteria Unified, that is.
You did such a good job for Robert. So that, of course, was the fun part. What I have in this presentation are some more details about our project budgets. The first page that you see up here is a summary of all of our sites, and you can see that it's laid out so that our current estimates for January of 2020 are to the right of our estimates that you saw previously in May of 2019. You can see that there's to the right of that is a total expenditures by site. So we're at about $42.3 million expenditures as of the end of November. And then the right side of the spreadsheet shows for each site how those projects are being funded. So the first column shows the bond allocations of the $90 million. The next one shows estimated state funding. The third column shows E-rate, the building fund, developer fees that we are using for a number of our projects. The next column I've labeled currently unfunded, and that's related to the shortfall at Maine School. So I wanted to make it clear that we don't have bond funds fully allocated to the estimated project costs at Maine School at this time. And then the total project costs in the final column of $111 million. So that's the summary. Then moving through the spreadsheets, we go through the sites, and the sites show each project and what the status is in the same form of layout, comparing today's estimates with the estimates in May of last year, expenditures, and how those projects are being funded. So at the high school, what you'll see is that the total project estimates haven't changed from last May to January. It's $32,466,000. There are a few changes in how those budgets are being allocated. So you'll see that I now have a separate item for the fire alarm because we're required to report that separately. It's a separate project for DSA. Previously, that budget was included in campus modernization. So you'll just see it's just a flip-flop between those projects. And that's true of any campus where we're doing modernization. We have broken out the costs of the fire alarm project. So you'll see that everywhere. And then the other change you'll see is we've allocated $150,000 for fume hoods for our science wing, and that's come out of the budget that was allocated for the science wing. So it all works out. We're just reporting it in a little more detail. And then you'll see at the bottom, one of the projects is being deferred till July 2023, which is the high school engineering lab.
And I have a question on that. And why is that?
Pardon me?
Why that change to 2023?
What is the change?
Yes.
In the project
engineering
costs
lab.
estimates?
Correct.
Those haven't changed from last May to
No,
January.
he's asking
The date.
why did we defer that to the
To 2023.
The engineering lab.
the state funding, right?
Oh, yeah. So remember back last May, we went through the budget status of all of our projects at that point, and we determined that some of our projects we should defer until we get state funding, and so this is one of them. Did I answer your
Okay.
question?
The that bond, the state bond.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean, though, that we're deferring the engineering program. I just want to
No.
make that clear. You know that that's already in
Understand.
place. Yeah, this
So-
is the wood shop.
The wood shop, okay.
Yes.
So then at the middle school, the project estimates from last year till now also have not changed. We have completed all of the projects that we are planning to complete as of this time. The others are being deferred. So the main one that's being deferred, you'll see listed at the bottom, is the multipurpose room or the old gym modernization. So that, again, will be deferred until we get state funding. And so you won't see a lot of activity on this campus, and you notice the architects didn't present any slides on that campus either, because we're not doing any work there this summer. So for LISO, again, the project estimates have not changed, and we've broken out the cost for the fire alarm system, similar to what we did at the high school. And at Aliso, the project that has been deferred is all of the modular classrooms that we were planning to build to replace the portables. So that's now deferred till July 2023, or until we receive state funding, which hopefully will be sooner than that.
And is that the kindergarten costumes
Yes.
that's in the governor's budget for modernization?
Yes, although we've already implemented
applied.
full day K.
Oh, so it's only for
Yes,
that
it's only for-
expansion?
yes.
So this might be more of a question for Jonathan, but I'm curious how the FEMA map, the flood maps are fleshing out as far as the freeway completion and how that if that's going to move Aliso, if we have any more certainty if whether Aliso gets out of the floodplain or out of the critical zone in the floodplain. Or if we don't have any information, you can just say that. All right.
Okay.
So we don't have any new information.
We don't have any new updates from the city, or we would be providing those to you, because I'm interested in knowing that too. But as far as we know, based on what we were told before, we're still a year or two out from any revisions. So
A year or two? I thought it was going to be this year.
I don't think it was ever 2020. But I
thought it
could
was
try to get.
when the freeway project was completed through Carpinteria, and the bridges were completed. That was going to improve the water flow
Correct.
through the valley,
Correct.
and that was gonna mitigate a lot of the flood concerns that Carpinteria is prone to.
That is correct. I think there's just a matter of the work gets done and then a period of time elapses while they do all their calculations and get all that information to FEMA again. But we can try to get an update on it, because we
Okay.
haven't heard anything in a long time about, where we are with that.
But so that project's on hold for a few years
2
now.
years.
So we're going to evaluate whether or not the modulars work versus stick built. Is that kind of the thinking there? That's your project, right, Robert?
It is.
Yeah.
Would you like me to speak to that?
No, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. I think what you were discussing about the floodplain issue is that even though the freeway work is done and the site would be seeing the benefits of that in terms of from the drainage perspective, I think they have to do a map revision, and that has to go through this sort of bureaucratic process. So we will give you an update on that. We need to touch base with people.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably semi-fortuitous that we're able to do that, because I know that's potentially it's a significant increase in cost to raise those foundations or raise the pad, actually that entire new building pad.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
if we can, if that's mitigated by the improvement in drainage, then I think it's certainly worth waiting.
I agree, and I think that's why we're here, why we're at the point we are in terms of deferring that project. And we do expect that when that revision comes through, that there'll be some cost savings related to that. Because the last time I studied the issue, if you remember, I was comparing stick-built versus modular construction, but they both had the heavy site work element involved with the assumption of having to raise the building grade in response to the flood map required base flood level.
Yep.
And it was significant. As I recall, it was like 4.5 feet above
Yeah.
the existing grade, which is quite a lot of earthwork, as you know, and a lot of accompanying expense with that.
Yep.
So there'll be more to come on that issue as we find out more information.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay? Thank you.
Okay, and just to keep in mind, the determination of what the flood map is hopefully will coincide with when we get state funding that we can use to go forward on that project. Because we need, both of those things are going to be helpful or necessary to go forward. So for Catalino, again, the project estimates haven't changed since May of 2019. We've done obviously a lot of work on that campus, so our expenditures are a little over $9 million as of the end of November. And at the bottom of the slide, you can see a list of the projects that you voted to defer to July of 2022 and 2023. So that would be the ECLC, the Early Childhood Education Building, the administration building, the kitchen, and room 1. And then as a separate project, the Learning Center, which would replace the existing portable library and computer lab. Okay, Summerlin, project estimates. This is where we have some changes. Joe talked to you about a little bit about how we're proposing to do site-built buildings, and that we are proposing to reduce the buildings by 1. So instead of having 6 in the original plan, we would have 5 buildings. So that would be equal to the 3 classrooms, an office, and then a separate room, which would be the library multipurpose room or for additional use on the campus. So we did a pretty careful look at what we thought the costs of this proposal would be, using the square footage construction costs that Joe referred to from previous current projects. We have a better idea now what needs to be done in terms of site work and foundation work, so we have estimates for that. I built an estimate that it also included 8% inflation for 2 years, so that we built in a cushion for that as well, and soft costs is of about 25%. So you can see on this slide that the increase for the site for what we're still calling modular classrooms, because you all haven't voted to change that, is $6,205,000. So it's gone up a little, but it hasn't gone up tremendously because we're reducing the scope of the project by 1 classroom. So then, if you go to the right side of the spreadsheet, you can see that the original bond allocation, this is back in November of 2016, was $2,532,000. And then in November of 2016, you all voted to allocate developer fees and the amounts in our building fund that came from the sale of Toro Canyon. So that is almost 3.5 million. And so you can see that right now, based on our cost projections, we need an additional amount of funding of about $216,000. And I can see from looking at our financial data that we have enough money right now in our developer fee fund to cover that shortfall. So one of your other things we'll be asking you to do at the next board meeting is to vote to allocate additional funds to cover the new revised costs for the side of $6,216,000. And you,
Cindy?
and
Sorry to
you,
interrupt. On the summary of project estimates, it looks like those two numbers are transposed unless I'm reading it wrong.
oh, what, I'm sorry, what?
On your summary of projects of all the school sites, you have
Yes.
2019 of 6.2 million, and then January 2020 of 6 million. Are those just transposed?
Just a second. So you're talking about the
Pages
summary
down.
page.
The very first page of the.
Okay, let me go back and look at that. Oh, you're right. You're right.
Good catch. No one got
Good
it.
catch. I didn't see that. I work on that so much, and I didn't even notice
I didn't catch it either. For
So-
Summerlin?
You're absolutely right. They should be switching columns. But when I calculated the total cost and how to allocate it, we get to the right place. It's just
Yeah.
showing up in the
Well, I
wrong
just know if
column.
it changed the full expenditures of Measure U funds, so.
It doesn't change.
Oh, I see.
It does, actually. It changes the bottom line just
Yeah.
by a couple hundred, that $200,000.
Oh, it is transposed.
Well, it is.
see what you
It
mean.
has changed by 200. I just ended up, I know what, I see what you're saying, though. But the total expenditures for May should be the total expenditures for January.
So the grand total then for, as of right now, is
Yes.
200,000 more than was
Yes.
projected.
Correct. So you could just swap out these two columns because everything else remained unchanged between May and January. So the only difference is that one amount for Summerlin. So the total cost, grand total, should be $111,252,000 for January of 2020, and then
Supposed to.
$111
The whole thing.
billion. The whole thing just swaps across, and I'm really sorry.
No, that's all right.
I did not catch that.
I'm sorry, too. I didn't catch it either. I went through this. Sorry.
And the numbers all worked out. You know, I got to the bottom, and then I could add it across, so I thought I was good.
Don't act surprised, though, Cindy. It's all supposed to do that.
Yes. So, so that's Summerland. Since that's the one where we had the change in our proposals, I just want to make sure that you didn't have any questions, because at our next meeting, we're going to be asking you to make some decisions based on our proposals. The first one being that we begin design work for site-built classrooms instead of the Gen 7 modular classrooms, that we reduce the scope of the project to 4 classrooms plus the administration office, to approve the use of additional developer fees and building fund resources to cover the additional project costs. And that would all be coming to you on January 28th. So are there any questions
I just have a
about?
question. How does that affect the timeline then of the project completion?
Okay.
And
so-
where
so-
where do they go, the
Yeah, okay.
students during that time?
Explain it.
Summerlin?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I had mentioned that basically it's a 4-month delay.
Yeah.
And originally, the master plan said that we were going to go into DSA December of 2020 and start construction March of 2021. Now we're going to go into, if this is approved, we'll go to DSA in April of 2021 and start construction in June, which I was mentioning is really when school's out, it's a good time to start construction as opposed to in March.
The
A 3 to 4 month delay.
stick built though, take longer than the placement
I
of the
don't believe so,
modules?
because I
Really?
think the
Oh,
more
okay.
that we've looked at the site, it's
Okay.
going to take a long time to crane those modulars into place.
Okay.
And
The
my
foundation.
feeling is the foundations on the conventional ones will be easier to build
Okay.
than the foundations
Okay.
for the modular buildings. They were extensive foundations.
So will they be out the whole year,
Yes.
or yeah?
So
okay.
essentially,
They'll move to another site for you.
actually, Joe made the point, and he's absolutely correct. Educationally, it'll work better in that it's a whole school year that you start your year, and they're at Rincon, the Rincon building.
Okay, okay.
They'll be there.
Okay.
And then they'll finish that year, and then they'll have summer to do all the, make sure that everything's ready for them to enter in September.
Well, since they're moving to the high school campus, will a playground be makeshift?
No,
for
Rincon.
them?
It'll be the
Rincon.
Old, the,
The
current
old Rincon
the old
building.
Rincon, right there on the back of the school.
Oh, same thing though. Will they have a playground that? will
I'm
be-
sure we'll, yes, I'm sure we'll figure it
Okay,
out
for
to
a
make
year,
it.
okay.
Because it's a whole year, so we'll make
They
it.
will have nature.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll put some rocks in and trees. Okay, all right.
So next week, the architects and Measure U and Jamie and I and Michelle Fox will meet with the Summerlin citizens and the parents and share this information with them before you vote on the end of January.
At that meeting, Joe, will you be bringing larger rendering of your new plan?
Yes, I've gone
or-
ahead and, I already have a revised site plan, and I also have a revised renderings that are different than the modular renderings. I will be bringing a lot more.
Okay, because it looks fairly similar in layout as the Gen 7s.
It's going to follow the same site plan, and as I mentioned,
Okay.
the county BAR really liked the site plan, and the committees have liked the site plan.
And is
It's
that
just
the
the
reason?
architecture, the exterior envelope of the buildings is going to look more like Summerlin than the swoop roofs of the Gen 7s. And I really like the interiors of the Gen 7s. They're really nice. I just think we can do a more Summerlin building. I think the floor plans are going to be very similar. And so I'll bring it the 22nd.
Yeah, next Wednesday. And do we actually think the permitting will go through? I feel like we've been hearing for the last 2 years that it's at coastal development permitting. Do we, now that we're starting over in a way, is it still going to happen?
That's why Jonathan's here.
Yep.
Good evening, members of the board, Jonathan Leach. I'm so glad you asked that question, so I had a chance to stand up. Where we were in the process was we had submitted an application to the county. The county had reviewed those materials. They had requested some additional information. They wanted some more information on stormwater control. They wanted information on the landscaping and water consumption requirements for landscaping. So we began to provide information in response to what's called an incompleteness determination. And in that process, this option of substituting on-site constructed buildings for the Gen 7 came up. I was able to have a conversation with the county staff, confirm with them that we could suspend the application so they're not charging time for continuing review. They've set it aside, and they will pick that review back up again when we give them the substitute set of plans showing the on-site construction of the buildings versus the Gen 7. We believe that the project is still going to qualify under a categorical exemption for California Environmental Quality Act, so we're not going to open the door for more intensive environmental review or schedule constraints from that standpoint. From the BAR standpoint, they've given us conceptual approval only at this point in time. The next step would be preliminary approval. Joe will bring in a set of plans that are substantially the same as the conceptual approval, site plan layout the same, height of the buildings, massing of the buildings similar. Probably they'll like it better because it'll have the design motif that is more in keeping with Summerlin. So we haven't really lost any time on the architectural review side of things. So we're really only extending the review period by the amount of time that it will take for us to develop the replacement set of plans to give to the county. And it's all the preliminary indications we've gotten back, the questions that have been raised, we've had answers for, and there haven't been any substantial concerns identified by the county thus far. So still looking very good that we are going to have an approvable project from the coastal development permit standpoint.
And we're still taking over Varley as well as an easement?
I do.
I missed the question.
Whether Varley's abandonment was going to be included in the process. I don't think we are pursuing that at this point. Yeah. We've had discussions with county roads, and the difficulty and the expense of doing an actual easement versus leaving it set up to be in its, essentially, we don't have current plans to do any modification to that lower playground. And because of that, everything is simplified by just concentrating on the upper campus alone.
So there'll be no connection between the tennis courts down below and the school still, really, besides this street?
Correct.
Yes. Any questions on that summary?
Not at this time.
Okay, and then for Rincon Foothill, you can see that the project estimates have remained unchanged. And for Main School, again, the estimates remain unchanged, and as you know, we've deferred all work on the school site pending receipt of state funds or, some other kind of money, more information and all of that. So you can see that the projects that have been deferred are modernization and the modular classrooms. And in fact, the only project we've actually completed there was the fire alarm system, which is good. And then this is a list of the projects that are deferred to 2023. It's the same list that you saw last May in 2019. So it recaps it. So when anyone asks, well, what's going on with this or that, this is really a good list to refer to. The high school, it's the engineering lab. The middle school, it's the NPR modernization. Aliso, the modular classrooms. Canalino, several projects, including the Learning Center, the ECLC, and the admin building and kitchen complex. At Main School, both the modular classrooms and modernization, and then at the bottom, district office modernization. So all of those projects are on hold until we get state money or we see some other way to do these projects. So that gets us to state funding. So just as an overview, the voters approved a facility bond back in 2016, and it was $9 billion. And there were a lot of school projects that school districts had applied for, and that money has been fully exhausted. Or I should say the authority has been fully exhausted. A lot of those projects, including ours, are still in line waiting for the actual funding. So we did make an effort to get all of our applications in 2018 so we would be able to get in that line before the bond authority was exhausted. And
So can you explain what that means, Cindy? Exhausted, because that sounds like the money's gone.
no, the money is not gone.
I
So
understand that.
the voters said, okay, we're going to give school districts who apply $9 billion. That's the bonding authority. So the state has now been authorized to sell state bonds for up to $9 billion. So the state hasn't done that. They haven't fully sold off all those bonds, and I can talk about that in a minute. But that's the bonding authority. So that was why we made an effort to make our applications so that we could get in line so that we could get approved if the state sold more bonds. Does that make more sense?
So, but the exhausted part means that projects have, applied projects have reached the $9 billion.
That's correct.
That's what the exhausted means,
It got
right?
all the way up to here really fast.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, it's
'Cause if you were just reading this, you'd think, oh, all the money's been allocated already, but
no,
it hasn't.
and that's not true. And I understand why that's confusion. Interestingly enough, this is how the state describes it too. I didn't make up how they describe it. They talk about the bond authority being exhausted. But it does sound like the money's gone, and actually what's happening is everybody's projects are in line and they're waiting for the state to sell bonds. And so what happens to all districts, and we did this as well, is we could only do applications once we had an eligible project that was approved by the Division of State Architects. So it's not like you can just instantly go out and make applications. You have to have a very specific, detailed, fully approved project and submit that as your application. So we've done that. We've done all the work. And so what happens is there's all these projects that have been submitted, and then they're processed for funding in the order those applications are received. So we're further back in the queue because it took us time to design and get approval from DSA for our projects. So at this point, we're waiting for funding to be available. And the delays in the state bonds have resulted in waits of up to four years. And you will notice that in this current year, the budget approved sale of bonds of $1.5 billion. And the governor's proposal for this next fiscal year is also $1.5 billion. So they're not getting to the list very quickly. The bond sales are slow. And so what we've done is we work with school facilities consultants. They do all of the applications for us. They're a really good resource. And they have made estimates based on the dollar amounts of each project that's in the queue and how the state has been selling bonds so far. They've made estimates about when we would get our money. And so that's why I'm coming up with this July of 2022 or July of 2023. It's based on school facilities consultants saying this is how much state bonds are being sold every year.
And you've applied for enough to cover the deferred projects that we have proposed here?
Basically, yes. And in fact, some of those projects that are deferred, we have bond money for them. So for example, we have bond money allocated to Maine, and those projects are all deferred. So we do have money to do those projects if we got all of that state funding, and if our estimates, things change. 4 years from now, if you have 8% inflation every year, our estimates may change and it may look quite a bit different. But at any rate, we're hoping that the state will begin to sell bonds more quickly. And it would make sense because on the March 3rd primary ballot, there's a new bond proposal. It's called Proposition 13, which is really confusing because we all know what Prop 13 is. But this is a new Prop 13, and it's called the Public Preschool, K-12, and College Health and Safety Bond Act of 2020. And it has a proposal of $15 billion for voters to approve, $9 billion for K-12. And you're going to see a resolution at the January 28th meeting in support of this Prop 13 ballot measure. So it'll be a chance to vote on it. So my perspective about it is here they are voting on a whole new bond measure, and they haven't completed funding the previously approved ones. So I'm hoping this means that there will be more urgency in selling state bonds to fund the old program first. It wouldn't make sense to fund the new one if you still have people waiting for money under the old program.
Wouldn't make sense, but this is California.
I know, and everybody laughs about that because it's like, who thinks our world makes sense, right? So we'll see. So the last slide I have shows all of the applications that we have submitted to the state, the Office of Public School Construction, and you can see they were all submitted during the year of 2018, and you can see all of the campuses where we had eligibility for state funding, we submitted applications. And school facilities consultants estimated the state share amounts that I show in those columns, and you can see that right now it's a little over $16 million. And again, based on their work, we're estimating the funds will be released in either July of 2022 or July of 2023 at the current rate.
So I've got a question. Has there been any talk about, I know the governor in his campaign was talking about universal preschool. And I'm assuming that that's kind of been put on hold now, but has there been any talk about any monies becoming available for facilities on that level?
For preschools, I think that that's part of what's in this new bond.
That's in this new bond?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't read the CSB, I think.
It's the public preschool. That's why we're really interested.
Okay.
And that would help cover Maine.
It would.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what we're
Yeah.
interested in.
Right.
Right. Okay.
It would free up that money for
Yeah.
other stuff.
Yeah.
We also submitted a grant for a 50-50 match outside of the bond for the wood shop,
Yep.
for the CT facility that you voted on. So we'll hear in March our success for that.
Great.
Are there any other questions?
No, I just want to comment, like, I know this was a ton of work, and you guys are doing great. Your team is doing great, so we may be a little, like, nervous about the deferment, but, you guys are making great progress, so, thanks.
Okay, the question I have is that there's a grand total estimate of 111 million for phase 1, 2, and 3 on every school site. The question I have is how accurate is this estimate? Because for years we were told that 90 million was going to be enough to plus the state money, and it wasn't until last year that that actually told us that it wasn't going to be enough, and there were a lot of changes made. So that's the question I have. Will 111 million current total estimate will be enough to cover every project at every school site?
I think the important thing to remember is this is what we think today. Because these projects, a lot of these projects are being deferred for several years, we're all familiar with how construction costs have been escalated. So I can't tell you what that number is going to look like when we get 2 or 3 years down the road and we're evaluating doing projects. What I can tell you is the projects that we have on the board that we're currently committed to, we have good estimates for those. But when you start looking out a few years, things change. So I can't tell you today that it's all going to cost $111 million when we're looking at 3 or 4 years down the road.
Is there any inflation built into these numbers?
There is in Summerland because we actually could do that. A lot of these are current projects, so we pretty much know what they are.
There was inflation in the original estimates
There was, yeah, in the master
facilities
plan.
master plan. I think we factored like a 5%, 4.5%, 5%.
But in May last year, you all voted at our recommendation to start allocating that to projects because prices have gone up. So it's current prices, we know pretty much what they are. But, when you start looking down the road, I don't even, we haven't built in inflation necessarily for that. We would be looking at, there's too many variables at this point. Unfortunately.
Because the way I see it is that let's assume that 111 million will not be enough. Let's say that it ends up at 120 million. What will happen?
So that's the beauty and value of making the decision you all made back in last May to defer a lot of projects. You then start looking at what you've deferred, you look at what you think you still want to do, and you make decisions based on that with the money you have. So that's what you do. Or unless you have some other way of getting more money, that would be the other option.
Yes, so for example, right now, we don't know what the CTE facilities grant money is going to give us. That could give us $1.5 million. We don't know what the preschool facilities grant may look like. That might give us $5 million. So between 2020 and 2023, there are other revenues that may come from the state that we aren't aware of today.
So another question that comes to my mind is that, for example, the Baylor property of 4.2 million, that could be applied, if not all of it, part of it to the
That's
projects,
another option.
correct?
That's another option.
We have other options.
So
Okay.
there's different
There's-
options.
Well, right now it's 3 of them. So,
Yes.
okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, I personally want to thank all of you, too. That was very enlightening, and I hope the people that might be listening, if they have any further questions, that they, speak to us or speak to Diana or speak to Cindy or Dave, so we can answer any questions you might have. But thank you all.
See you Wednesday, Joe. I'll see you on Wednesday.
Okay, moving on to, there's no public comment, Monica, obviously? So we're moving on to warrants. May I have a motion to accept the warrants?
I move to approve the warrants for the period of December 14th, 2019 through January 10th, 2020 in the amount of $801,200.55.
I'll second that.
Are there any questions?
Yes. I think 4 of them. Okay. On page, let's see, page 2, the first paragraph, U.S. Bank, it states some statements. I was worrying about those statements. November 2019 statement, and ended up at, and then 3 more for a total of $6,771. I was worrying about that.
So the U.S. Bank is the district Cal cards. District has a Visa Cal cards, and there are several card holders. All of our principals, we use that as a purchasing tool in the business office. It's used for conference registrations. It's used for a lot of purposes in lieu of purchase orders, classroom materials. It's used district-wide, and that's the credit card statement payment.
Oh, okay. Page 3 was more about the translation services for 350 at the very top. I was wondering about that.
For the
Is
board
that-
meetings?
Yeah. So that's a translating meeting minutes.
No? Because there's a name, Julia.
IEPs.
Yeah, I mean, they're translating transcription either from an IEP or a district document. So we consult with those. We don't have anybody in-house.
It has to be a certificate of translation.
Right. Especially for IEPs, they have to have specific training.
Okay, I've seen that, but I just was wondering about the charge. Okay, now on page 4. Look for it. No, I'm sorry, it's page 3. There's a charge for $375. Santa Barbara County Education Office. This it's refers to as the mock trial registration. I was wondering about
For
that.
the high school kids, the high school students go to do mock trial at Santa Barbara County Court
Like practice
if
their
they practice
debate
mock
skills.
trials.
Okay. Now I have page 1 on page 1 and page 2. A total of $30,163 for legal fees. And my question is that whenever I read something like, for example, first page, there's one charge for 24,000, and then there's another one for 175, and then on page 2 there's another one for 262, and then there's 3 more charges. $1,083, $830, and then another one for $3,873. And as I read this, just stating legal services doesn't tell me anything. So, for example, there's a lot of space on to the right-hand side, probably just a couple of words or so. For example, let's say that it's, for example, labor negotiations. That would be enough to comprehend this charge. Or, for example, any other activity
Would that
within
be,
legal limits,
would that be attorney-client privilege? You
Yeah,
can't put
the
confidential
attorney matter
stuff on
isn't
there.
listed on the description.
However,
Because I mean, a lot of people would see the community would read legal services, and including myself, wondering. I mean, probably 2 words or so, without coming into any legal conflict, just to an orientation of what this is.
So there's several issues. The main issue, this is a county form, and so we comply with their requirements, and they do not, we cannot indicate what the legal matter is. However, I am very well aware of what this is exactly attributed to, so I'm more than happy to educate everyone. So for this particular bill, those 3 different matters are related to labor negotiations, personnel issues, and the third is the Baylord property. We needed.
You see, for example, Baylor property, it's public record that it's for sale, that it's something as a guide. For example, this charge and this other charge, just like you said, Baylor property, that would be fine. I mean, that would actually not only guide me, but guide the community. Okay, so there's this is what's going on.
We'll pass that on to the county.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
we'll
mean,
pass on that
because,
recommendation to the county.
I mean,
Thank you.
I'm blindfolded. As I just read towards legal services.
But we do
wondering-
expect when you read material and people are confused, they're more than, we encourage them to call us, and I'm gladly will sit down with anyone who's interested and go through what questions they might have.
Yeah, okay, but but you see my point?
Yes, I understand, yes, yes.
I mean, there's something, well, Baylor property, for example, what is wrong with that?
No.
The
There's
county,
no way to
but
put a
the
description, right?
county,
Yeah.
the
Is that what you're
county
saying?
doesn't
Okay.
allow
Or-
for that.
Yeah, this form doesn't have that ability.
Oh, well, but we can say it, live. Okay, discharge for the Baylor, the sale,
So each bill is several pages long, and we're only allowed a minimal,
yeah.
but I cannot put description of the matter on the bill. It just can say legal services. I can't put legal matter descriptions. It's not, we can't do that on this form. That's why, I mean,
But anyone can state it.
But Rogelio, like, we know that this law firm deals with our labor negotiations. Okay, so you could easily make the assumption that this charge here is for labor negotiations.
No, actually, I don't know.
Or with an employee matter. And then this charge, here, that's Craig. So he's probably dealing with real estate or Baylor or something like
But-
that.
I don't know. And if I don't know,
But you call Diana and ask her.
no, well, if I don't know, then that means the community doesn't know.
Well, no, but
And
that's your job to explain that.
No, in part, but I think that there's, what is it, 6, 7, 8, including Diana, but everyone's responsibility to inform.
Yes, we do when people ask.
So I think if you have a question, Rogelio, you call Diana or you go into the office and ask what that's for, or ask Maureen.
But that would tell me what's going on. That would tell me what the charges are. But the main idea is to get the community to know. Otherwise, they're blindfolded.
But if you're asking the questions and somebody asks you, then you can give
Yes.
them the information.
So now you can share that information.
No, let's say, for example, I got to you and ask you for, what's this legal charge?
Yes.
Whatever the charge might be, then that would mean that I could share it, correct?
Yes.
That's what you're telling me.
Yes, yes, absolutely. That's your role and responsibility.
Well, okay, then you'll see me quite often. All right.
All those in favor of accepting, you have any other questions?
No, this is it.
All those in favor of accepting the warrants?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to gifts and grants and donations. We have a donation from the Rotary Club of Carpinteria to the district for the music program at Carp Middle School for the Ukulele Club in the amount of $1,998. Can I have a motion to approve that?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second?
Are there any questions?
Thank you, Rotary Club.
Really?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we have G2 is a donation from La Centra Summerlin to Carp Unified for mental wellness programs in the amount of $10,000. Can I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second? Any questions? And yes, thank you, La Centra Summerlin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And we have the annual audit. Are you talking about that, Marie?
I will. I'll give you a little summary. It's a big, long document, so I am certainly not going to go through the whole thing. But I will tell you that we did have this is our first audit with a new firm, Christie White and Associates. Very nice firm to work with, very informed partners that were on their team in our district. They were very thorough. We've had the same auditors in district for many years. This firm was much more thorough is a word, but I would say they dug so deep that we were kind of like, wow, it was a lot of work, and it was a challenge at times because they went places that the district hadn't had to dig up for a long time in an audit. Now, I wasn't surprised because I've had experience with them and other firms in the past. But the good news is there wasn't one monetary finding in this audit. It was a very clean audit. There were 2 findings. Most were clerical in nature. The first was that the coordination with the free and reduced lunch applications and the CalPADS submission was off by 2 students out of 60 that they sampled. So we knew that when they came in October. We knew that before, so we had already addressed that. And it did not mean anything monetarily to us. However, if we were an LCFF district, it could have had some fiscal implications. But for us, it was just a kind of a make sure it doesn't happen again. If we were LCFF, it would be about a $17,000 adjustment. The second audit finding was the same. It was our school accounting report card had some old information in one of the sites. It didn't get updated. That's a really kind of state form that's really old. And if you don't catch some of the old areas of cut and paste, it just repeats itself. And so they caught that. It had actually been there for several years that way. So again, it was a way for us to really get a new set of eyes to make sure things are in order. No monetary. It's not a repeat finding. We already fixed it. And then we had 3 findings from the previous year that were late bank recs, et cetera. All were remedied. None of them were repeated. So all in all, I was just proud of staff. It was a really clean audit. They came, they went, and we sighed a big sigh of relief.
How long were they here?
They stay about 4 days.
It's a lot of.
Call it a week.
That's a long time when you're digging through drawers.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Congratulations.
Yes.
To staff, yes.
I move to approve the annual audit.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Great. Measure U again? No? And the personnel summary, if somebody would like to move to approve the recommended personnel items.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And board announcements. And I would just like to remind you that the board announcements relate to activities you might have been to or an activity that's coming up at a school. So if we can kind of stick to that, that would be great. Michelle?
I have nothing.
Rogelio?
No.
Andy?
I want to congratulate the girls' water polo team for beating Malibu.
Really?
First time in a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
They're playing really well.
They are playing very well.
Yeah.
My granddaughter's playing very well.
She is.
Thank you. Jamie?
Nothing more than the Measure U update Summerland on Wednesday. Talk to him personally.
Anything else? Board calendar, Monica?
Thursday.
Monica.
I'm sorry. It's been a hectic week with no service. We just a reminder that we do have the governance workshop this Thursday at 5:30 at the district office. Okay?
And dinner will be served.
Yes, dinner will be served.
And hopefully everybody will be there.
Truffles?
Oh.
Sandwiches and water.
There you go.
Any?
Bread and water.
Yeah, there you go. Any future agenda items?
Do you want us to prepare for anything for Thursday, read or anything?
You may review the handbook, this handbook.
Okay.
And if you might want to consider some recommendations for any changes or modifications.
Okay, we're going to take these with us
Yes.
and bring them back Thursday.
I
Okay.
spill every week anyway, so.
Okay, thank
Do
you.
you bring it back?
No. I think I have like 20 of them.
Then I would like to move this,
It's not me, I know.
this meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.